Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where lace and velvet might seem romantic in paintings, but trust me, you wouldn't want to live there. Tonight, you are a medieval bride, and let's be honest, your chances of surviving this are slim. You're born into a family that views you more as a tradable asset than a person. If you're fortunate, you hail from a modestly noble house. If luck isn't on your side, you're born into royalty, where your life belongs even less to you. It's a paradox. The higher your status, the more political your marriage becomes, and the earlier you're whisked away in silk slippers to become someone's wife. You're barely out of childhood, with no understanding of your own body, when the adults around you start plotting your betrothal to a lord's son. They huddle in corners, murmuring about dowries, land claims, and bloodlines. Anything but your personality or dreams. If you enjoy this journey, consider liking the video and subscribing, but only if it resonates with you. I don't need pity clicks. Share in the comments where you're watching from and the time. It's the dead of night here, 2:14 a.m., with only my ceiling fan and the weight of medieval gender roles keeping me company. Dim the lights, turn on a fan for a soft hum, and let's begin this tale together. You're 12, perhaps 13 if your father shows mercy. You have a faint idea of how babies are made, but you're far too young to consent to that reality. One morning, your mother brushes your hair and shares the good news. You've been promised to a barren second son. Your stomach churns. You've never met him. He's at least 20, likely older. She calls it a great match. Land, a strong family name, an uncle with archbishop connections. You nod, feigning excitement while mentally saying goodbye to your dolls, knowing tears would only earn you a scolding for ingratitude. You sit silently as adults plan a celebration you don't comprehend. You're excluded from the table where the deal is struck. That's men's business. Instead, you're sent to embroidery lessons, where girls whisper about dowries like they're stock prices. Your dowry, land, livestock, coins, perhaps some embroidered linens if your family wants to impress, is your price tag, a payment for being someone else's burden. No dowry, no wedding. And no wedding by 15 brings shame, with whispers of sickness, madness, or offended bishops. Your identity fades with marriage. You become wife of or lady of, depending on the dowry's worth. You have no say in the wedding date, dress color, or whether your groom arrives sober. You've likely never spoken to him, maybe glimpsed him at a feast, patchy beard, suspicious smile, eyeing you like livestock. Historically, noble girls were betrothed as young as 7 or 8. The church mandated no consummation until 12, but enforcement was lax. Some argue these were symbolic contracts, though evidence suggests many were not. Sometimes, you're not just a family's gain, but a peace treaty's tool. Two feuding families bury the hatchet, and you're the shovel. Your feelings don't matter. You're a living olive branch, expected not to falter with emotions. If you're pretty, large eyes, pale skin, the medieval consumptive ideal, your value rises. Too much wit or a loud laugh lowers it. If your father loses favor or dies, your engagement vanishes, and you're suddenly unwanted, perhaps sent to a convent out of necessity, not faith. Peasant girls fare no better, marrying young, sometimes younger, into two-room cottages with thatched roofs. Their husbands, be they yeomen or blacksmiths, demand obedience, fertility, and butter-churning skills. In your prettiest dress, you stand like a porcelain statue while your family dictates your unwanted future. Your mother adjusts your veil, whispering, "Be strong." You nod, with no time to learn what wife means, walking gracefully, eyes lowered, silent and less spoken to. Wedding night hints come in vague euphemisms that unsettle you. Happiness isn't expected. Duty is obey, marry, produce. You're a hinge connecting two unclosing doors. Your fears and transition from girl to woman are irrelevant. Every girl you know has witnessed this. Sisters vanishing behind walls, muffled cries, your mother's weary smile mirrored in yours. You wake to chapel bells, each toll a countdown to your wedding day, a negotiation, not a love story. Your leverage, not the main character. Your father laughs with your future father-in-law over ale, viewing you as a promise fulfilled, a debt settled, a bridge to prosperity. Childhood dreams of courtly love, knights, maidens, roses, fade, replaced by the rustle of parchment and dowry receipts. Your dowry includes 3 land parcels, 2 milk cows, and silver coins your grandmother saved. The groom's side insisted, as no man marries without clear benefit. Love is suspect. Marriage is about alliances and territory, even your womb. He wants an air machine. She's quietly slipping further into herself, a retreat with no escape route. Going home isn't an option. It vanished with the priest's final blessing. If you try to flee, your family would bear the consequences. Your father could lose land, your brothers their rank, your sisters their marriage prospects. You're not just trapped for yourself, you're bound for their sake too. Day after day, you play your role, wife, hostess, lady. You master holding your fork just so, memorizing distant cousins' names for future favor, and laughing softly but never too boldly. Your childhood lessons weren't about reading or writing, but about silence, grace under strain, and turning a cage into a throne's illusion. That night, your husband sleeps soundly beside you. You lie awake, gazing at the embroidered canopy, a cluster of roses framing a stitched dove with wings spread as if to fly. The needlework is flawless, every thread in place. You wonder about the girl who crafted it, her marriage, her happiness, if she too stitched a piece of herself into someone else's life. Closing your eyes, you avoid counting the years ahead. Your first public correction comes swiftly, leaving you dazed. At a midday meal in the Great Hall, roasted goose, hard cheese, boiled vegetables, you. Winter closes in hard this year. The roads are half frozen by mid-November, and the northern tenants send fewer carts each week. Snow piles like memory on the parapets, and the wind howls like something dying. The manor feels colder than it should, though the fires are fed and the windows shuttered. No, it's not the cold. It's the waiting. You wake each morning to silence at your side. Your husband is there, but distant, the warmth drained from him like wine from a spilled goblet. He eats. He walks. He issues orders. But he is not whole. You have won something from him, and you're not sure he knows how to live with that loss. You thought that would satisfy you. It doesn't. Underscore. The messenger arrives on a sleet gray morning, cloaked in church black. He brings with him a letter sealed with red wax and sanctimonious weight. It is written in the language of peace, but you feel the threat curling beneath each line. His Grace the Bishop requests an audience. Not asks, requests. You read it twice. The bishop is no fool. He knows your husband returned weeks ago. He knows the rumors, the politics, the shifting power inside your household. And now, he wants to see it for himself. You prepare the great hall, not for a guest, but for an inspection. Every candlestick is polished, every tapestry hung without a crease. The altar cloth is changed. The priest is coached. You even unbolt the windows so the cold can gnaw through the room. Let the bishop feel what kind of season he's walked into. He arrives with only 4 men. That's a message, too. He doesn't need protection. The bishop is old, but not fragile. Eyes like river stones, smooth and unreadable. He speaks gently to your husband, asks about the harvest, praises the steward. But soon his gaze finds you. You've been a blessing to this estate, he says. We've heard it from many mouths. You incline your head. The Lord provides the hands. I simply used mine. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Still, there are roles, he says. The man commands. The woman keeps the hearth. Then perhaps it's the hearth that taught him warmth, you say smoothly. Silence stretches. The bishop watches you like a man weighing a blade. Later, alone in the solar, he speaks plainly. Forgive me, he says, but power unsettles when it leaves its proper place. You sip wine and say nothing. I've seen men undone, he continues, not by war, not by death, but by wives who forget what God gave them. You set your cup down. Tell me, Your Grace, did God give us obedience before he gave us thought? Or do you just expect us to ignore the order of his gifts? This time he doesn't smile. The visit ends with tense civility. The bishop departs with a prayer and a warning disguised as benediction. Your husband says nothing that night. He eats slowly, drinks too much, and doesn't come to bed. You lie awake, eyes on the ceiling, feeling it shift. You're being watched, measured, and you're not afraid. Because now you understand something the bishop does not. The fire doesn't need permission to burn. You order the outer wall reinforced. You tell the kitchen to stretch the grain. You instruct the priest to prepare prayers for protection and secretly ask the stable boy to keep watch at night. This is not the version of power they promised you in all those bridal tales. This is something messy, sharper, real. Historically, when war drew the men away, noble women became de facto rulers of their estates. Letters from the 14th and 15th centuries document women organizing defenses, collecting taxes, distributing rations, even negotiating truces. But these women weren't celebrated. They were tolerated temporarily. As long as the husband lived, the wife's authority was on loan. The minute he returned, it disappeared like dust brushed from a table. Still, during those brief windows, some women found a kind of clarity. They realized what they were capable of. And you're starting to feel it now. For once, you're not just reacting, you're acting. The first test comes a week into your husband's absence. A small group of men arrives at the manor gate, peasants from a nearby village. Their crops failed, and they beg for grain. The steward argues against it. We need to save what we can, he warns. We don't know how long the Lord will be gone. But you remember their village. You rode through it once, a lifetime ago, before you were married. You remember the girl who gave you a blue ribbon just for smiling at her. You tell the steward to release 2 sacks. Just 2. Enough to keep them alive. He sighs but obeys. The next day, a note appears at the gate. Thank you, my lady. We won't forget. Later, you learn they've begun calling you the kind mistress. The steward laughs. Softness won't hold a manor, he says. But something about the name sticks. Not as weakness, but as strategy. Fear makes people obey. But gratitude builds loyalty. And loyalty matters now, because rumors begin to circle. Bandits in the woods. A burned field 2 miles east. A merchant who never made it back from the port. The priest says it's a time of trial. The cook says it's just bad luck. You say nothing, but inside, a knot tightens. What no one tells you is how much war changes things for those left behind. For the wives, daughters, sisters, and mothers sitting in stone houses, staring down a future that grows darker with every smoke plume on the horizon. You take to walking the walls at dusk. You never thought you'd do that. It's something your husband did, a routine, a show of presence. But now it's yours. You circle the outer parapets, shawl tight around your shoulders, watching the tree lean for movement. The guard nod as you pass. You nod back. One night, you find a young guard sleeping on his watch. He startles awake, fumbling for his blade. You don't scold him. You simply take his dagger, hand it to his captain, and replace him with another. You don't yell. You don't explain. You act. From that night forward, no one sleeps on the wall. You're not unafraid. But fear, you've learned, doesn't get the last word. Action does. There's a strange dignity in this in-between space. You're not quite a ruler. You're not quite safe. But for the first time since your wedding, you feel like you're shaping something. Like you're not just a bride, or a hostess, or a shadow at the side of a man who sees you as decoration. And yet, even now, no one would call you powerful. Because your authority is still borrowed. It hangs on the hope that your husband will return, that you'll hand the reins back without a fight, that you'll smile and step aside and pretend this didn't awaken something deep and dangerous in your chest. One evening, you open his study and sit in his chair. You rest your hands on the arms like you used to. You look out the window at your estate, your people, your sky, and you ask a question you've never dared before. What if he doesn't come back? Not with hope, not with fear, just possibility. And for the first time, the thought doesn't terrify you. It thrills you. You find out about the mistress in the most humiliating way possible, over spice pears and gossip. It's during a visit from Lady Clarice, a neighboring noblewoman whose voice carries like a church bell and whose mouth is never far from someone else's secrets. You don't like her, but your husband always insisted she was welcome. And in times of war, well-connected women get extra cake and the best share near the fire. She's sipping wine, eyeing your dress with barely disguised envy, and telling a story about her cousin Stewart who ran off with a miller's daughter. Everyone around the table is laughing politely, but then she shifts tone and says, "Of course, your husband must be terribly bored with no distraction. I do hope he's found some company in the field." And there it is. The dagger slipped into conversation so smoothly it barely nicks the air. You don't blink. You smile. You say he's always had a fondness for his men, and then excuse yourself before your hands start shaking. The moment you're alone, you sit down hard on the edge of your bed. It's the tone that gave it away. Not what she said, but how she said it. Casual, certain, like it's already common knowledge. Like she's not sharing a rumor, but reminding you of a fact you've simply failed to acknowledge. So now you know, he has someone else, or several someones. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're sitting here in your finely appointed prison, managing his estate, shielding his name, stretching his grain, smiling through his absences, and somewhere out there he's wrapped in another woman's arms, grunting poetry to someone who doesn't have to worry about grain taxes and prayer schedules. It's not a surprise. You'd be naive to expect loyalty from a man of his rank. Even medieval marriage contracts often made space for this kind of quiet betrayal. Concubines were accepted, unofficial wives were ignored, and mistresses were rarely punished unless they got too loud or too pregnant. But still, knowing is different than suspecting. Continue to next message due to length. Continue. You stand, walk to the window, and try to let the cold air clear your head. There were stories in your childhood, quiet ones told behind tinted fingers by the servants. Lords who took comfort women on campaigns. Ladies who received gifts from their husbands' lovers as a sort of unspoken apology. Noblemen who housed mistresses in the very same castle, just in a different wing. Discretion was the only requirement. As long as it wasn't spoken, it didn't have to be answered for. And you were taught to be gracious, to understand, to accept that marriage is about alliance, not affection. You were warned carefully, gently, that men have their needs, and that it's unseemly for a wife to pry. But tonight, sitting alone in the cold light of dusk, you don't feel gracious. You feel used. You think about how many nights you've lain awake listening to the wind and the crackle of the hearth while he was out playing soldier and lover in equal measure. How many weeks you've spent organizing his records, smoothing his absence with your good manners, nodding through prayers you no longer believe will protect you. And now you're supposed to smile to let it pass. No, you don't smash anything. You don't scream. You don't even cry. You're not allowed that kind of public grief. But inside, a part of you starts to turn cold. Not broken, just crystallized. You begin to think differently. You start by visiting the chambermaid who knows everyone's secrets. Her name is Talia. Small, clever, always 2 steps behind the conversation and 1 step ahead of everyone else. You don't ask outright. You just let her speak. Ask questions about the road, the men, the camps. Eventually, she confirms it. He took a girl from the village near the western ridge. Young, pretty, red hair. There are others, she thinks. One at the southern camp, possibly a widow, possibly not. You thank her. You give her a small pouch of coin. You say nothing else. And now you know everything you need to. You try to tell yourself it doesn't matter, that it's expected, that it's normal. But the problem is, you're not normal. You've spent too many nights reading ledgers, memorizing maps, watching the manor like a hawk. You know the rhythms of this place better than anyone. You've grown sharper, more capable, and more dangerous than the girl he married. And now you've been insulted. Not just privately, publicly. Lady Clarice knows, which means others do too. And that means your control is cracking. Because in this world, a wife's strength is like plaster, solid as long as it looks smooth. The moment people see the cracks, they start pulling at them. They test you, mock you, question your authority. You must act, so you do subtly. First, you make sure Clarice is never invited back. The message is delivered by the steward, polite but final. Then you take inventory of the kitchen, the guest chambers, the wine cellar. You have the guard rotated, the chapel cleaned, the curtains washed. You assert yourself in every corner of the house, not with rage, but with presence. You remind them all, you're still here. You're still the wife. You write your husband a letter. Short, sharp. You don't mention what you know, but your tone is unmistakable. You ask when he plans to return. You remind him that taxes are due, that grain is low, that there have been whispers of wolves in the forest. You use his own words. Urgency, stability, legacy. He writes back 2 weeks later. Brief. Apologetic. He says he'll return soon. You read the letter once, then burn it. It's not about bringing him home. It's about showing that you can, that you will. Because here's the truth, no one tells a bride before her wedding night. You're not in competition with the mistress. You're in competition with the silence that lets her exist without consequence. And you refuse to lose. Continued again in next message. Continue. Weeks pass. You hold the manor together like a seamstress mending torn cloth, quietly, carefully, without asking for thanks. And people start to notice. The cook starts calling you Lady Regent behind your back. The steward stops, second-guessing your orders. Even the priest shortens his sermons when you give him a look. You haven't won, but you've survived. And in this world, that is victory enough. Then, one morning, you wake to find your husband's banner riding up the hill. You watch from the window as he dismounts, dusty, sunburnt, still smiling that careless smile that once made you blush. He's come home, and now, everyone watches to see what you'll do. If you'll run to greet him, if you'll bow, if you'll yield. You do none of those things. You descend the stairs slowly, deliberately. You meet him in the great hall, where the fire is high and the banners hang proud and stiff. He strides forward to embrace you, but you raise one hand, graceful, commanding, unmistakably final. He stops. "My lord," you say, "your house is in order." The words land like a verdict, because that's what they are. For the first time, he sees you, not as the girl he married, but as the woman you've become. And behind his smile, you see it. Hesitation, respect, maybe even fear. You offer him your hand, not in surrender, but in shared command. And the court watches, and the world shifts. That night, the hall is lit like a festival. The wine flows easily, and laughter bounces off the stone walls like coins tossed at a jester's feet. Your husband sits beside you at the high table, his hand resting casually on your chair, the picture of marital harmony. But you know better. This is not a reconciliation. This is a performance. And you play your part to perfection. You smile at his stories. You toast the returning soldiers. You even touch his arm when he speaks, just enough to draw attention, but not affection. He doesn't speak of the girl. Neither do you. There's no need. Everyone who matters knows, and everyone who matters is watching. Later, in your private chamber, he tries to speak plainly. "You've grown colder," he says, as if it's an accusation. You tilt your head. "I've grown clearer." He watches you. There's a flicker of something in his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Curiosity, as if he's not sure who you've become. You are no longer the eager bride with trembling hands and a heart that fluttered when he undressed. You are something sharper now. You are the blade he left behind, honed in his absence. He reaches for your wrist. You let him, but when his hand travels higher, you catch it mid-movement. "I'm not a reward for your return," you say softly, not unkindly. "And I'm not a penance you can pay in flesh." He studies you again. You see the tension in his jaw, the bruised pride. But he doesn't press. Not tonight. You sleep beside him, but you don't touch. In the days that follow, the rhythm shifts. He tries to reclaim the manor as his own, but finds resistance in every hallway. The steward now answers to you. The guards still follow his orders, but they glance your way before moving. Even the pages seek your nod before lighting fires or preparing parchment. Your husband was the storm that left, and you were the calm that stayed. You let him take meetings. You let him sign papers. But you never let him forget who kept the estate from splintering while he was chasing glory and chasing women. One morning, he finds you in the solar, bent over accounts and letters. You stand in the doorway longer than necessary. You've turned this place into a court, he says. As if you're queen. You don't look up. I ruled while you played at war. Should I have left the throne empty? He doesn't answer, but he doesn't argue either. That's when you know he's unsure of his own footing. You, the obedient wife, have become something dangerous. A week later, the girl arrives. Not the red-haired village girl. A new one. She arrives under escort, with a satchel of letters and a priest's seal on her tunic. You meet her in the chapel. Young, educated, well-spoken. She was sent from the abbey to tutor the children. That's the story. But you see the way she glances at your husband. Not with longing, with recognition. She's no mere tutor. She's a test. From a church? From his allies? From him? It doesn't matter. You know how to handle it. You invite her to dine in the hall, seated just far enough from your husband to send a message, but close enough to keep eyes on her. You praise her learning, ask her about Latin texts, test her on scripture. She answers perfectly, too perfectly. She was trained for this. Later, you visit her chamber with a pitcher of wine and a smile that could cut glass. Let's speak plainly, you say. She meets your gaze. She doesn't pretend. I was told you were formidable, she says. They were right. You pour 2 cups, but drink only from yours. You'll teach the children, you say, and you'll stay far from my husband. She doesn't flinch. And if he comes to me, you lean closer, voice cool and calm. Then I'll know he hasn't learned fear. And I'll teach it to him. The balance is delicate now. A marriage, yes. A partnership, perhaps. A quiet war, absolutely. But it is one you intend to win. Because you're not the girl he left behind. You're the storm he created.